In botany class today, we went out to review some of the terms that we learned in our notes. Those terms were woody versus herbaceous. Any woody structure is going to be classified as a tree, shrub, or vine. In this picture, this is a tree, so it would be classified as a woody structure. We later turned and looked at some herbaceous plants, which will follow in this video as well. When we look at those trees, shrub, or vines, they don't always have bark. So if you take a look at this picture, you can see that I'm holding up raccoon grape. Raccoon grape is actually a vine, so it trails along, it climbs up on trees. The thing is that it doesn't have bark. If you guys can see that it's very green, tender, that's because they're brand new growth structure, and over the course of several years, it will start to get more bark-like. This tree, which is a woody structure, does have bark, and it also has these really long thorns on it. This tree is called a honey locust tree. They're all over around the high school. Later, we turned our attention to some herbaceous plants. Like this herbaceous plant is giant ragweed. You guys are probably familiar with giant ragweed because a lot of people are allergic to the pollen. And around this time, it starts to grow that flower, and then the yellow pollen comes from it, so people have hay fever from that. And the weather reporting stations, they also report the amount of giant ragweed pollen that's in the atmosphere. Also, behind that is some woody structures, so those are different. This is wild quinine. It is a herbaceous plant. Wild quinine actually is also feverfew, and this is used for reducing fever and medicinal properties. However, I don't recommend you going out there and finding it and trying to reduce a fever without having some type of degree behind that. And behind that is an actual woody structure, a tree. Moving on to this picture, you can see that there's a herbaceous plant. And then we see two woody vines. One vine is plain and the other one has some hair coming off of it. Always stay away from the woody vines because that's poison ivy. If we take a look at this picture, this is poison ivy taking over a tree. There's tons of poison ivy here. I circled a cluster of its white berries, and you would never eat white berries because they're actually very dangerous and poisonous. Here again, we see two vines on a tree trunk. Both are all going to be woody structures because it's a tree and then there's a vine. Again, pointing out the fact that these are hairy vines. So at one point, there are poison ivy leaves. You don't want to touch the leaves or these vines or the roots because they all have the poison ivy oil on it, and a lot of us are allergic to that oil. This is a plant that is found in our greenhouse. It's called a spider or an airplane plant, and it is herbaceous and it's perennial. It will keep coming back. And another plant in our greenhouse is also this mum. This mum is also called a tender perennial because it's based off of where you plant it, whether or not it will keep coming back year after year. And this is classified as a herbaceous plant because it's not a tree, shrub, or vine.